situation anyway if the child just dies. But to have the child brutally murdered, and for you to go out and see the child brutally murdered, and then to go through this mental torture that this family has been through, that has been perpetrated on them by Wilson and his gang there in Ferguson, by this rogue prosecutor McCullough there, who is a pro-police type. He's been known to do that. He's been around over 25 years. He has constantly done this. His father was killed by an African American, so you know what his stripes are. You don't have to label him a zebra. But if anyone is responsible for whatever happened last night, burning, etc., it is the police department, Wilson, the Ferguson Police Department, McCullough. Those are the people responsible, because McCullough incited a riot last night, make no mistake about that, by holding his press conference when he did. He could have held the press conference at 9 o'clock in the morning, and a lot of the steam would have been blown off in the light of day. Much easier to control. First of all, it's not advised, and I would not advise people there to march at night. It's just really not safe. You can march in the early evening or on Saturdays or other days, but if you must march at night, be very, very careful, because provocateurs like this fellow was at the news conference in St. Louis will come into your protests, and they will be there for other reasons. Now, not all people that come in there and are just, say, looters or whatever, as Dr. Sharpton said. Some of these are infiltrators, provocateurs, etc. They are sent in there to not push the cause. In fact, the Fox station had a police car on their website burning. I think there were only just a couple of cars burned, but they had this one burning all night. The impression that these people are burning. That is to turn the public opinion, but they don't need it to turn the public opinion. They have the monopoly media, NBC, CBS, making this guy into a hero. And incidentally, the civil rights workers that were killed in Mississippi were awarded the Medal of Freedom yesterday by President Obama. Swaney and Cheney, etc., there, Swaggart, that were brutally killed and lynched there, like Michael Brown. And there were some other things going on too. It was the 8-year anniversary of a killing in the city of New York. So we go with these situations. They're all interrelated. All these things are done. But the situation is to take the hoods and sheets off of these characters and expose them for what they are, with all of the monopoly media trying to push public opinion in a certain way. If you recall, when Dr. King marched, the public opinion in the South was against him. Even African ministers were against him. So this is not unusual, but they did overcome, literally. And now there's a monument in Washington, D.C. for Dr. King, and a holiday. But it didn't happen in the vacuum. Stevie Wonder traveled the roads, highways, byways of this country campaigning for that, and they forced Prune-Face Regan to sign the bill. And he did, in fact, sign it. So nothing is done without struggle. That is how people make history. History does not repeat itself. People make the history. Now, what we saw in the 2014 election was an election, a low turnout election, manufactured by the monopoly media, the Koch brothers, etc. And these are the people behind these laws, like in Missouri, where you can shoot a defendant literally in the back and be justified. There, under most circumstances, it doesn't matter if you shoot him in the back or in the face, if you have some fear of your life. Now, this man Wilson is a big fellow, 6'4", 320, 330 pounds. He actually weighed more than Michael Brown, because Michael Brown was not quite 300 pounds according to his autopsy. So, but he was a much bigger person. And if you look at the videotape where Mr. Brown was allegedly shoplifting, you can see his big paw reach there, get the cigars, and the owner of the store came there. He didn't hit the man. He just gently pushed the little fellow back. So that does not tell you this man was the kind of man that would have taken on Wilson. And Wilson exaggerated his injuries. You can see it looked like he had a little of a fat lip there in the back of the ear, and they gave him some antibiotics. He was not even losing any teeth. It's easy in a scuffle like that in a car. He probably hit something in his car, and that's what it appeared. But nonetheless, he went to one of these petty arcade things without paying his admission charge. This will do it for us. We'll talk to you on Wednesday. Good day.
Attorney in St. Louis, Bob McCullough, announced no indictment of Officer Darren Wilson. It was expected, but still an absolute blow to those of us that wanted to see a fair and open trial. I think that it is clear that even when you see a blow coming that you expected, it still hurts nonetheless. We said from the beginning that we had little or no confidence in this local prosecutor and called for federal intervention. The family of Eric Gardner stood with the family of Michael Brown with us at the National Press Club in September saying that, and wanted to be here tonight to continue to show that bond with them as they collectively share the pain of having a loved one taken by law enforcement. Let me say that is also now joined by other families, including the Gurley family, that now has joined that rank of those seeking justice in a death caused by law enforcement. When I listen to the prosecutor, several things clearly comes to mind. It is very interesting that he tried to imply that the federal government and he shared the investigation when federal standards are different than state standards. So you cannot have a federal and state investigation looking toward the same things. What you need for civil rights charges and what you need for state charges are separate. So even there and on a legal premise is very flawed. Secondly, on a state level, in the state of Missouri, you can shoot at a fleeing felon. You can not do that on a federal level. And we went after the police with Rodney King and Abner Louima on excessive force. But let me say that it is, to me, very suspect to say that if you claim Michael Brown, as he did, was shoplifting cigarillos, that qualifies as a felon, fleeing or not. You are trying to describe a shoplifter as a fleeing felon. That is the inference that was given. It is also very interesting that he generalizes. Some witnesses say this, some witnesses say that. It is interesting that as he talks about some witnesses, we don't know what witnesses he's talking about. Officer Wilson was a witness. And we don't know which ones he was not. And he was very clearly and carefully would not give whether this was a unanimous vote of the grand jury or not. Because clearly if some in the grand jury voted for an indictment, with all that he claimed they saw, did it convince all the members of the grand jury, and what is it that they saw? I will be joining the family of Michael Brown in Ferguson tomorrow morning. We'll have a press conference at St. Mary's at 11 o'clock, the scene where I hosted the first rally for Michael Brown 3 days after his death. we will be then returning back here to rally around the country. We have many cities under National Action Network that will be on tomorrow, gathering in front of federal buildings, calling for the federal government to escalate a criminal indictment, and we will continue to organize and mobilize. I will announce details at that time. Let it be clear, though, that we are dealing with the same attitudes of Ferguson right here in the city. This is one case. You have another case now with Gurley. Ferguson is not just in Missouri, which is why we watched it tonight at the House of Justice. We can lose around, but the fight is not over. Thank you.
With my co-counsel, Attorney Anthony Gray, and Attorney Darrell Parks, and Attorney Pam Means, President of the National Bar Association, we will initially address this press conference, the family's response to the announcement by the prosecutor yesterday. Rev-dr-al-Sharpton and Michael Brown Sr. will come and address you after the attorneys make their comments. Michael Brown Sr. will say very little because he doesn't want to misspeak because of such emotions that are going through him that will later be held against him. And so with that said, we will take a few questions after that agenda is completed, and we will try to respect the family of Michael Brown Jr. in this most terrible, unforgiving hour that they are facing. Attorney Gray and Attorney Darrell Parks and myself, we objected back in August to this prosecutor. We even wrote a letter to Governor Jay Nixon requesting a special prosecutor to be appointed. We objected when he informed us the process that he was going to use that was different than anything else, different than any normal grand jury that you would have presented. And now, after we watched him last night in his comments, we strenuously objected to this prosecutor and this process. But this morning, after we, like all of you, went through as much of the information, I think it was described as a data dump, we went through as much of it as we could and saw how completely unfair this process was. We object publicly and loudly as we can on behalf of Michael Brown Jr.'s family that this process is broken. The process should be indicted. It should be indicted because of the continuous systematic results that is yielded by this process. And let's be very honest. Let's be very honest about this process. We have the local prosecutor who has a symbiotic relationship with the local police and the local police officers who sit in judgment whether to indict the police when they brutalize or kill a young person from our community. And normally, that prosecutor has no relationship or no regards for the young person of color. And so, as Attorney Gray and Attorney Parks predicted at the beginning, we could foresee what the outcome was going to be. And that's exactly what occurred last night. But it is awfully troubling when you look at what was released and you hear about the police officer who shot Michael Brown Jr. in broad daylight, the unarmed teenager, and you hear he testified for 4 hours.